When we're talking today, I know you're going to hear and want to know the answer to who owns the culture in your organization.
Leadership is culture building. Leadership is influence. Leadership is what can I do today to make this the kind of company that I want to work for, that our customers want to work with? How can I influence that today?
I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for stopping by. At the Bold Business Podcast, we are normalizing important conversations. Yes, there are tips. Yes, there are ways to solve problems. More importantly, are going to be what do you need for yourself to be able to solve those problems and make the most of the education, the training, and the programs that you are already using. This is a supplement to that. It can sit on top of it, fuel your soul, fuel your mind, and most importantly, regardless of where you're at on your journey. Maybe you're starting out. Maybe you're ready to scale. Maybe you're going through reinvention. The conversations we are having will help you at each of those stages. So hang around, see what's going on, and I look forward to seeing you engaging with our videos.
You are listening to the Bold Business Podcast, where you will hear firsthand experiences about what it really takes to ensure market relevance and your company's future.
Today's guest is Brett Hoogeveen, co-founder of BetterCulture. He's on a mission to make the world a better place to work. Leadership development and technology is something we know can help culture, but we may not be using to actually leverage what's available to us in terms of growth, expansion, and longevity in our organizations. So to build stronger leaders and engage every employee, there's a way to do that without you taking the brunt of the weight and doing the heavy lifting. Better Culture does that for you. And so here's the deal. The deal is this. When we're talking today, I know you're going to hear and want to know the answer to who owns the culture in your organization. And I'll give you a hint. It's better if it's not the CEO. And the second thing to listen for is what makes a good engaged culture and how does that actually help your organization remain competitive and have relevance and create its own future. And the third thing, the way we connect to each other and the way we do our work together, being rooted in connectedness means that our culture requires its own plan and to be part of the bigger strategic plan. And we talk about the nuances of that. It needs its own plan that is wrapped up and articulated and addressed in the overarching business direction. I'm so excited to have you listening in, hear those three things and a whole bunch more with a great conversation that I'm having with Brett. What's the biggest thing that's on your heart about what's happening in business today and what is the current trend?
So, two things that are really on my heart. One is just the value of culture. Organizations, I think, too many that have an invisible blind spot for seeing what their business could feel like, be profitable like if they have a super engaged workforce and it's invisible. So there's so many just different aspects, whether that's productivity or other things that I think are somewhat invisible. I run a company called Better Culture, so obviously I'm an evangelist for this, but if I write a book in the near term, it's going to be on that topic. Like I'm really frustrated that leaders don't see what they're missing out on when they're not focusing on it.
Everything wants to fight to get out of my face. So just that alone, I think I can already tell. We're going to go in some fun places. Hopefully there's some unexpected and all the way around fun. When did you realize yourself that there was this concept of business owners are missing out around their culture?
There's a long story there. He has just said, it's obvious. Like, we don't have to convince people culture has value. Everybody knows it. Like, anybody who's in business knows it. And I've always had in the back of my mind, I don't know. I think they might need some extra convincing. And so more recently, I've just sat down with a series of people and I've started asking, where does it add value? Where do you think you're missing? And then people just have no sense how to put a sharp pencil to employee engagement and culture. And so I think I'm finally convinced he's wrong.
My follow up to that is going to be where was he right to start?
I mean, he's right. Lots of places it has immense value and people feel it. Like people know it. Every leader will tell you, yeah, of course, culture is like everything, right? But when you try to drill down on that point, he's right. But when it comes to how are you operating your business over the next week or month or quarter or year, and what are you prioritizing? And for goodness sakes, tell me you have a strategic plan for culture then, right? If it's so important, do you? Oh, you don't? What's the problem there? So
Let's go back to that strategic plan of culture and or a strategic plan where culture is included. Are those different to you?
no, it's not different. It's just what's the depth. If you can't tell me with some level of depth what you're going to change, who you're going to level up, where you're going to emphasize and put it on a timeline and who's got accountability for it and just basic things like that come associated with strategic planning, I just often find people don't do it. They focus on all sorts of financial metrics or what product are we going to emphasize or what location are we going to open to, do strategic stuff for the business, but not for culture.
So maybe you and I are on a similar mission then, that there are things that aren't happening in traditional business models that must change to ensure the relevance and our own business's future.
In my world, we just focus just on the culture piece. Great. I want you to focus on their whole business with that exact philosophy. Just make sure if you want your people to be more committed and engaged, let's work on that.
Okay, now I have a different question. So your dad's view is right. Your view is right. Is it because times have changed? Or is it because we didn't prioritize it the same? Or is it even something else?
It's a level of depth. I think at the high 30,000 feet level, people know culture matters. And even if they don't know exactly how to build it, they will agree with you that it matters. But once you start to say, okay, what are you going to do about it? Let's go one level deeper, two levels deeper, three levels deeper. That's where there's this dramatic fall off where most executives go, I don't know, HR, what are we doing? And that's it. There's not much further depth than that.
What role owns culture?
Somebody with knowledge, tools, and power has to own it. And it can't be a total group thing. It needs to be one person or a very small group of people. I'd love it if it's the CEO. If it's not the CEO, then the CEO needs to delegate some of their power to the person who owns it that can really say, no, this is a priority and speak up against all of the other business priorities and have an equivalent voice.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you said that it's not the CEO because I'm like, as I'm thinking and sitting and listening to you, I recognize consolidation is happening in our executive teams and the way some of those executive roles are coming together makes sense from an efficiency perspective, from a management of the cost and from a seeing and all blah 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 blah. But where it's really missing and where the danger occurs is we miss the facets of the points of view that people in different seats bring. So to your point, so who's going to own that and who's going to have that voice? And
Sure.
it could be somebody within the company. Could it be somebody outside of the company, like BetterCulture?
It's possible.
Yeah.
The problem there is power and permanence being front and center in all of the business decisions being made. That's really hard for an external. So we call that role sort of a culture driver. And we do that for some of our clients, but even with our best engagements, we know there's stuff happening we don't get to see. If you're in-house and that all company memo that went out and it's like, ooh, that should have been worded differently. That violates what we said was a top priority. You would catch so many more things with an internal person in that role than it's really hard to rely on an external to carry all.
Do you teach them how to create this culture driver within their organization?
No, on purpose. So 2 or 3 years ago, that was gonna be our business model, is we were gonna create a culture driver community, and we were gonna we were gonna train culture drivers, and we were gonna do this big whole thing. It's too complicated. It's something that doesn't exist, and to educate the marketplace and to educate companies and to make them give this person the level of power that needs to happen, it doesn't work. So what we need to do instead is find who's the right person that's already in your business that has power and cares about culture, and let's work with and through that person.
You help companies identify that person.
And it's the short list, right?
Or
To be ideally an executive. They're going to need to dedicate some time, 5 or 10%. It's not a full-time job, but this isn't something that you can just put and say, oh yeah, sure. I'll think about it once a quarter. It takes some effort. So
any big change takes a minimum of 6 months to even start to see that You can see a result faster than that. But for the light bulb to go on and go, oh, I finally get why this is actually working here, why this is important to us in our unique expression, our competitive advantage, our solution that's solving these problems for other people. And then it's where the rubber meets the road. Somewhere between month 6 and 9, that aha happens. And then it's now you've got to practice it and hold it, because that's the hardest part, right? Now you're past, ooh, we're getting the results. Ooh, we got this thing. How do you make it last? How does it fully integrate?
So this is an interesting part of the conversation, right? You said, what's on my mind? I explained there's this invisible, I think in the neighborhood of 20% of business upside that's being uncaptured. Why that's so interesting and on my mind lately is, and the reason I didn't have an answer for your question, the work we do historically is with companies that are in the top 20% of company culture and engagement anyway, because they value it, they invest in it, they see the value, they want to be better. We don't have any clients, like zero, that are in the bottom quartile of company culture that are saying, we're drowning, we need help. And I think the reason for that is they don't see it. They don't set, they have issues. They got turnover, they've got drama, they've got tension, they've got costs, they've got lawsuits, but they don't see that all of those fires are actually related to the culture that you've built over time. And we can't solve that in a quarter, but we can help you make a lot of progress over 3 years if we can back up and work on these things. But those companies, they're not interested in, they don't call, they're not interested in talking to us because they just don't see the value. So we have very few organizations that like we're antagonistic with leadership. We're like, you're going to do this. And they say, we don't know why. And we say, you need, they get it.
Those of you who are watching and listening, this is really important, because if you're listening and going, oh, I get culture's important, and you don't prioritize anything about it, you might as well just tune out or send it to somebody who does. For those of you who really want to spend some time and go, how do I take this to the next level? Do I have the right person? Do I have the right structures to get support and capitalize on some opportunity right now? Please keep listening. And that is a challenge for those of you who want to walk away. Just do it. This is not the episode for you, but guess what? Somebody else is going to come to you and say, I don't understand what's going on, or this is important to me, and I really want to understand the edges of my culture, and I want you to send this program to them. So how do we go? I want to go deeper into this, because I'm like, I bet, Brett, you have exa- you have examples of what makes up a good culture, right? You have 20 tenants. So how did you come up with 20 and not 7 or 50 or the other number?
The simplest way to think about what makes up a great culture is, can you answer two really simple questions? One is, what does it mean to be a leader in your organization? Do leaders have a clear mindset of what they're actually supposed to do to create an engaged, positive workforce? And so that's question one. Your question that you just asked goes to part two, which is, do employees have a clear roadmap for how they can show up every day and lead from whatever role they're in to build a better culture from the bottom up, from the team level? And that is correlated. It's similar to any company that has core values or a culture code or any of these types of things that are supposed to represent who we are, how we show up, how we work, all those things. But again, most organizations are not getting the value that they should be from what they're doing with their core values or those types of things. And so we've supercharged that with our 20 tenets of culture and trying to help organizations figure out what it looked like to build a healthy culture from the bottom up, not relying on leaders to do all the work.
There's something to be said about all of the pressures, the quick pace of change, all of the seemingly competing priorities on the surface. That extra time is necessary to address. And when I hear you say the executives, the management teams don't have to carry this by themselves, that feels like a breath of fresh air. It also feels impossible, even if I'm one, because I think I'm one of those people who has a company who cares about this and wants to understand the shape of it. So what shows up in my world? I don't think my culture is bad when there's drama. I don't think my culture is bad when there's changeover. I don't think the culture is bad when a project has to be shut down for whatever reason. I think it's bad when we can't talk about it. I think it's bad when people don't feel like they can speak up and say, we got some problems here. Let's address those problems. So I'm guessing that's part of one of the answers to those two questions. Is there an awareness of how can we show up here? So take it away.
Can I share the background of how we came up with this 20 tenets
Love it.
idea?
Let's
And
do it.
then I'll give you some specific
Yes.
behaviors that'll line up with what you're talking about. So, in the work that we have done over the last decade with organizations that want to be better places to work, that want to improve their employee engagement, their quality scores, whatever it is that they're after, and they know culture is at the heart of that. Most of what we have done as an organization over those years is say, great, let us work with your leaders. We'll do leadership training. We'll teach them what they can do to build healthier teams, etc. And that is valid. It absolutely is important. But there's a huge gap in any education. When you teach somebody something, people get busy. They don't put it into action as much as they could. So we asked ourselves, what would it look like to try to give an organization or a manager or a leader a tool that would help them not have to take all that load on themselves, but instead give something to every employee, to their teams, to the frontline people that says, hey, look, this is something that if you'll lean into it, not only is it good for the company and the team, it's also good for you. And so we said, what would it look like to help build culture from the bottom up and to try to entice employees to say, you know what? These are things that would just be good for me if I worked on. And oh, as a consequence, if I work on them, if I improve them, they will help us build healthier teams and healthier cultures. So I know that's a big bite, but that's what we were after with our vision. I think we pulled it off.
It is a big bite. Here's the thing though. I felt the ripple. And then here's this outside piece. We're actually talking a little bit about Winfinity. And one of the things I love about Winfinity, Brett, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you before. That's the win. Okay. It is not a Jessica original. I did adopt it. Full disclosure, I am passing it on because I do the concept. It's the win win. What's in it for me? What's in it for you? And what's in it for the good of the people that get the benefit or get the output of it, whatever that is positive, negative, neutral. So in this Winfinity that I'm hearing you talk about and these ripples, it has to start with who? Who's the plunk to make the ripples?
It can be anyone. And as we were envisioning what we thought we would build, what we thought we were starting with is a universal set of core values. Look at all of our best clients, all the best organizations. What are the things that they say we want our team members to show up and do these things, be like this? And we got pretty close to 20. Like we're in the neighborhood of 20. And as we were researching, we kept finding data. If people learn to be more coachable, okay, want coaching and feedback. Not only, of course, is that an indicator of an employee you'd like to have, a good team member. They want feedback. They appreciate coaching. Gosh, wouldn't we like that? It turns out there's unbelievable data that shows people who are just coachable in life have better relationships. They're more financially stable and successful. They have better careers. They are more happy and more successful. If you're just a coachable person, you are likely to be more happy and more successful. And so before we finalized our list, we said, whoa, let's make sure we're confident that we can say to every single employee and team member, if you lean into this type of stuff, it's good for you. It's just good for you. And so every single one of these 20 things that we've come up with, we feel very confident that we can go to employees and say, your employer is making an investment in you. Oh, yeah. And it's good for the team and the company. So it creates that winfinity. I love the term.
Share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. I thrive on your feedback and engagement. You're listening to the Bold Business Podcast, and I'm your host, Jess Dewell. This is your program for strategizing long-term success while diving deep into what the right work is for your business right now.
You're listening to the Bold Business Podcast, hosted by Jess Dewell, a nationally recognized strategic growth consultant. She works with business owners and executives to integrate just two elements that guide business through the ups and downs of growth. Number one, know what work is necessary. Number two, do all the work possible. Schedule a complimentary consultation to find out more at reddirection.com.
Brett Hoogeveen, co-founder at BetterCulture, has been sharing insights on boosting your competitive edge by knowing and living your core values. Now back to the interview. Hey, all you watchers and listeners, this is something that's really important. Maybe you're listening because you want to understand what goes into a good culture. Maybe you are not at the top. Maybe you are somewhere in the middle. And guess what? This is something then that you can take and embody, because what happens from being more coachable? Opportunities for growth in your organization. Hopefully you don't run out of those. Opportunities to say things that need to be said and start understanding where the edges of this are, and other people will take notice around you and building that team. So I'm going to say part of this Winfinity is every single, so I hear you saying everybody's going to be the stone that starts the ripple. And what would I say next? So anybody can do that centerpiece. And then what?
And it's good for everybody if you do it, right? So if you will lean in and be that ripple, it's good for you, it's good for the people you were closest with, and it's good for your company. Leadership is culture building. Leadership is influence. Leadership is, what can I do today to make this the kind of company that I want to work for, that our customers want to work with? How can I influence that today? And every person can do it today.
Will you explore this with me? I'm coming to work for you, BetterCulture. And I have my own personal values, and BetterCulture has organizational values. What are the organizational values of Better Value?
Better
Excuse me.
culture.
I'm
So
already mixing them up.
we don't have traditional core
Yeah,
values,
yeah.
but we use these 20 tenets. So what I would tell you is, look, you want to be a superstar here. Let me talk to you about these 20 tenets. Let me talk to you about the value of being coachable. That's number one. If I jump all the way toward the end, you said earlier, Jess, how do we make sure that people are comfortable talking about issues that aren't working well? That's tenet number 19, and we call it unspeakables. And in a great culture, you have to have the confidence and the tact to be able to bring up uncomfortable conversations that are
You
important
have to
to
be
you or your.
tactful. I am far from tactful, but I will bring them up I'll be like, give me a little grace here. I got to name this thing.
It is. And candidly, this isn't to pick on you, Jess.
Okay, I'm pretty tactful, but not always.
Yeah. When we're expectation setting for people, let's imagine. So, what's so cool about these 20 tenets is they apply in the work setting, but they apply in personal life. So, let's say, I'm just going to have some fun. Let's say that your neighbor consistently lets their dog out and it poops in your yard all the time. Okay. And you've been seeing this for months and you haven't said anything about it, but it really bothers you that they don't come pick it up. This has become what I would call an unspeakable, something that it exists. There's a tension. You know about it. Your neighbor may not know about it. And the question is, what is the appropriate way to bring that up where you preserve your relationship or improve your relationship, right? And you can just come out and say it and be hot and yell at them and say, this is ridiculous. And you could quote unquote bumble your way through this. And I would advise you will end up not in the ideal spot. And the same thing happens on a team or on a culture. If my feelings have been hurt, if somebody took credit for something that I did, how do I go about starting that conversation in a way that is likely to resolve it and leave relationships as clean as possible? That is my obligation if I want to be a leader on this team. Now, if I don't want to be a leader, I can just complain and vent and gossip and blow up at somebody. You're failing as a quote unquote leader, and you're not improving yourself in that regard.
Hmm?
Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense.
How do you do it?
So I got the bumbly way, because see, here would be my bumbly way. It would have been somewhere in the middle of what you were talking about on the edges, of catching them outside or knocking on the door when it's happening and saying, how's it going? What's going on? What do you like about the neighborhood? Here's what I really like. Is there anything you don't like about the neighborhood that we should talk to everybody about? And then I would probably sneak in, your dog poops in my yard and I really don't like that. I'm totally going off the cuff here, and I am trying to be slightly cheeky.
I would go find an opportunity where they're not busy or rushed, right? The timing matters a little bit. They're out in the driveway,
Yes.
they're watering the plants, etc. And I'd say, hey, look, I think you guys are fantastic neighbors. And I really want to make sure you know that I don't think this is a big deal. But I have been noticing, and my wife has been noticing for the last while, that maybe the dog's name is leaving us some presents in the yard. I just wanted to know if you're aware of that.
Yeah.
And something like that,
Okay.
where you're making sure you're validating them, you're saying the relationship matters, that you
There it is.
appreciate them, and you're not assuming negative intent. And that's what happens and where conflict spins up so often is it's like, A, can we talk about this? Because I think you're a jerk because, or something like that. You're assuming that, oh yeah, they're just doing it on purpose and they don't care. That will lead to very quickly heated conversations, etc. So assume positive intent. Guess what? That's another one of the 20 tenets. Learn to assume positive intent from your teammate, from people that you work with. This is the number one thing that you can do to improve your quality of life, your mental health, your relationships, your own stress level, is if you will just learn to assume that person that cuts you off in traffic just has somewhere to be, you will be so much less stressed. You'll be so much happier. you'll have such healthier relationships. It is believable. And the same thing is true in work cultures. It's the number one core value that I like to see teams embrace is we try to assume positive intent from one another.
It depends on my mood, but I do try and stay neutral to positive in terms of w- what other people are thinking or going through, or really not even aware that's happening because of whatever else is on their mind. But I know that I'm just as guilty of that. And so I would like to have grace around the times my brain is so focused in one area that I miss something that could hurt or make somebody feel uncomfortable.
I would never assume this is you, but do you have any just like gossipy friends?
Oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm the lockbox for the gossip. And it's not even, it's everybody.
And this is just not me. I don't enjoy spending my time doing it. Like I'm just not somebody that does it, but I'm around it a fair amount. And I just find myself thinking like, how do you don't know if they meant to you're using all this time and energy and frustration and sounds like you're stressed and your relationship is harmed and all this is coming from you're just assuming that they know their dog's pooping in your yard and that they don't care. And that's just an assumption at this point.
I love that. Naming the assumption I think is important. And I like the concept of gossip because it's sometimes, and what I have found is that some people do like to gossip and they like to share information that they think is juicy or whatever that might add to some drama or information. And by the way, okay, we all watch TV and whatever we're doing on YouTube and social media, it is very common, is what I will say. So we're modeling what we have been hearing and seeing. That's not necessarily right. And so I really appreciate you talking about this too, because we've got a couple of things going on. If somebody's gossiping to us, what do we do? And like I said, it's a lockbox because like you, I'm like, oh, it sounds like you're really trying to puzzle something out. What's the actual question or issue that you have here? Can you name that? Right? Naturally, will help them a little. And then it turns into something that if they chose, they have an option, or if they don't see it or they are set in their ways, I can cleanly say, cool, and change the subject. If I can help, I will covertly and still try because I think that's an important part of connection and not alienating people. And also then why is this person telling me this of all things? There's a reason they feel comfortable with me. So how can I actually show up for them in that way? And it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning. Think about it before you do it. Understand what the timing might be. What else might be going on?
Yeah, it is. And this is a hard one. This is a hard one for
It
a
is
lot of
hard.
people. Gossip, tenet
Yeah.
number 11 is
Ooh.
no gossip. This is a big one. And so I don't want to go on too long here. So please stop me if I'm boring you. But when it comes to any core values, forget my 20 tenets. If anyone listening, if you have core values, the question is, are they behavioral? Do they describe a behavior? Are they something that you're serious about? And is it something that you're addressing proactively with your people? The way we work here is X. When this happens, we do Y. There are certain things. So, for instance, if we say, look, here's our 20 tenets, I know it's a lot, but if you do these things, you'll be successful. And by the way, let's go through them a little bit and talk about why it's good for you and good for us. So we set the expectation ahead of time that we don't gossip around here. If we and you say it proactively. That's if you want to be a superstar here, you learn that's really good for nobody, right? If you're going to say something behind somebody's back, we'd love it to be something positive. We'd
So
love you to be
you snuck in another tenant. We went from 19 to 11. I
Mhm.
got you. And since I don't know your tenants, look at
Yeah,
me. There's room to learn. I love
yeah,
it.
it's great.
I love that because gossip is only intended for drama of some kind. Perpetuating your own internal, if that's your goal, whatever you're processing, because whatever, or external, because you're trying to influence something that you may or may not, which is also a type of control. Okay, so do you have tenants about those before I go?
I don't have any tenant that says don't be trying to exert control in a relationship, etc.
Yeah.
No, I don't have one that says don't be a bully. I don't have anything like that.
So this is something that I learned a long time ago, and there's a big story behind it. The outcome of all this work that I did was I wanted to live my personal values intentionally. And my personal values needed to be mine so that how I show up in my relationship, in my household, how I show up as a partner, spouse, a parent, how I show up in my communities where I volunteer and at my work, I have an identity. And to your question, grace, curiosity, and honesty are there's only three, and they're mine. And it's actually very interesting because they all are part behavior, they are all part perception, and they are all part action. And that's something I wanted to call out because I'm like, so first of all, right, when I'm thinking about this, if I know who I am and I have something I live by, a mantra, values, traditional or otherwise, however they are said in sentences, right? I boil them down so I can remember the three. And when I meet somebody, my job is to show up and meet them how they're going to receive it. Do I show up with grace in action? Do I show up with grace in perception and in this bigger picture? Do I show up with grace in behavior? And what does that mean and look like in this moment? Because even though because somebody could have the same value that I do, and it could demonstrate different. And so that's how I personally have said there's got to be more than this so that I can meet people, assume positive intent just because it doesn't look like mine doesn't mean it's wrong.
That's true. However, I think a really good definition for culture is the attitudes and behaviors that any group of people comes to expect from one another.
Fair. And that's the way you do work together.
Your question is, how do you actually operationalize this? How do you close the gap between how one person might interpret something versus how someone else might interpret something? Is that your question?
I've
Oh, okay.
chosen to come work for better culture. I've chosen to be open and willing to incorporate all of these tenets in the way we're doing our work together. I choose every day to come here, but for me to be able to know how coachable am I? Is the way that I show up and process actually gossiping here? What those types of things I have to know myself first.
Creating a process that where people do self-reflect on the core values. Can I pick on core values for a minute? Would that be maybe fun?
I can't wait to hear what picking on core values is because I love core values and I love all aspects.
I
Yes,
do
bring
too.
on the spiky parts.
But here's the question. When we asked ourselves, okay, we're going to help companies build culture from the bottom up, and we're going to do it with these 20 behaviors and these things. What I started realizing is how many organizations actually have a formal process where they ask their employees to self-evaluate how they do on their core values.
Nobody that I have ever met.
Isn't
In
that's
my
what you're
company
asking, right?
included.
So you're
Yeah.
saying, how do I know if I'm doing it? Well, yeah, that's a great question, but nobody's doing it, right? So as part of what I'm with 20 tenants. Okay. It's a philosophy, it's a set of tools, and ultimately it's an enterprise level software system. So we built some of this stuff into the system intentionally to help companies do it and automate it. Right. But one of the things we built in is a self assessment on these 20 things. Right. And so my in starting to pick on core values at a very basic level, most companies will say, here's what they are, here's what we hope you'll do, but they never say, how do you think you do on these? Is there one that you think you're great at? Is there one that you think you really need to work on? Wouldn't that be a good place to start if our goal was improvement? If our goal was to change behavior and to get people to live our values, wouldn't we A, self-reflect, B, actually pick at least one that we want to work on as employees that'll make us better? Okay, I'm going to stop there.
I'm your host, Jess Dewell, and we're getting down to business on the Bold Business Podcast. This is where we're tackling the challenges that matter most to you with actionable and achievable advice to get real results that lead to your success. Don't forget, press that bell icon so you never miss a program. And it's time to subscribe as well.
Focused on growth? Listen to more programs like this which support the challenges and opportunities you are working with right now. Come on. Search Bold Business Podcast for the key terms at reddirection.com or your preferred podcast listening app.
We're talking with Brett Hoogeveen on the topic of company culture and why having an actionable plan matters. Let's continue the discussion.
I'm appreciating your perspective because here I am going, I'm pretending to be a listener and I'm pretending to show up and know that I have no real power or sway of being able to say, I want to be part of the team that works on culture. So I've got to show up as me. So that's how my perspective in this conversation has been to this moment. And what I really appreciate is you've come back and said, there's more to the story. And you only can get so far. And you're only going to develop yourself as much as yourself. But until you lay something else on top of it to see what that actually seems and looks like in a new way, I'm not taking advantage of all of the opportunity to really understand, do I still fit to work here? Do I want to still work here? More importantly, how much is my company actually doing what they say they're going to do in the way that we work together?
And you're asking those questions from the individual employees.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was
right?
like that. So I was continuing that of we can all lead. And so how do we show up to these in this way? But
Yeah.
I think those two tie very much together.
They do. the question, in my opinion, if you think culture is valuable, if you'd like it to be better tomorrow and the day after and the month after, if you like I'm speaking from the organization's perspective now, from leadership perspective. If you know that matters and you want it to keep getting better, do you have a plan for doing it? Another question is, what is the culture you want? Hopefully, in most organizations, your core values, your culture code, your whatever you have is pretty close to describing the culture you'd like to have, right? It should be attitudes, it should be behaviors. What would a great employee, how would they show up? What would they do? What energy do they hope? But that's where it stops. And what I like to ask is, what's your plan for helping employees get better at those things? Most companies don't have a plan for that. They don't ask for self-evaluation. They don't coach people specifically on values. They don't have activities and team building things that they can do that builds on those things. And that's what we built with this 2010s vision is we said, okay, let's create self-assessment. Let's create growth tools. Let's give leaders and organizations stuff they can do to actually try to push for progress instead of just, aren't our core values cool?
So sinking in, let it sink in. And one phrase that comes to mind is it's got teeth. You can have the stuff that's like slippery and whatever, but there's something that's you can grab onto and use, right? And I think that's a huge, so let's go this way. Tell me about your last self-reflection on your 20 tenets being part of Better Culture.
If this is a relatively new product, we're in our third campaign and we're ahead of all of our clients, right? We started using this ourselves first before we started using it with clients. And each year I have got a chance to self-evaluate myself and then to rate, pick two. That's how the software works. You pick two things that you want to work on, right? And this year, one of them that I have picked is tenet number 15. It's called Friends. It's just taking the time to build real relationships with the people that you work with. Gallup has that sort of infamous question of, do you have a best friend at work, that they swear up and down is so positively correlated to cultural health and everything else. And I agree, right? I'm friendly, I'm sociable, I check in, I talk, I laugh, but ultimately, sometimes I don't remember, like Monday morning, I'm not like, oh, how was the wedding? Or how was there's just, I need to go a level deeper on the actual friendships that I'm creating with the people that I work with. And so that's one of the things that I'm actively working on.
How does that relate to what you're working on in the rest of your life outside of Better Culture? Or is it totally different?
It absolutely overlaps. I'm someone who, I have a small group of friends that I keep in touch with pretty well. Most of them are better at it than I am. I don't usually start the group text. I don't usually plan the golf outing. I'm lucky enough to have a good group of friends that does that work for me. If I didn't have it, I'd probably be struggling just personally, knowing what to do other than hanging out with my wife and my kids. It is absolutely an area that, again, back to just, these things are good for people in general, relationships, having people that care for you and that you care for is one of the very top indicators of people toward the end of their life. If they say, are you happy with the life that you lived? Are you satisfied with, you're in your 80s and you've slowed way down, etc.? Are you happy with your life? That is one of the number one correlated things, is how many real deep relationships does that person have in their life? And if they don't have very many, they're usually not very happy. And if they have a lot, they usually feel like they lived a good life. Leading a life without building real friendships. So
What's an area that you're like, this is the tenant I don't really ever want to work on, and it'll always be at the bottom of my list?
I try to work on all of them.
You have to rank them.
I'm gonna
Somebody's
answer.
got to be in spot 20.
I'm going to answer. Not gonna say, oh, I work on all of them.
Did, and we can.
Tenet number 5 is something that we call welcoming. And again, I'm very friendly. I think I make a good impression on people, but I'm just not the person that is likely to create a thoughtful gift basket to have on a new employee's desk when they show up. I am not the person who is, when new neighbors move in, going to do something, bake cookies and bring them over. And I've just realized I want to be, and I know that's valuable to a team and to a culture and to relationships, to have people who are welcoming, who are thoughtful in those ways. It's hard for me for some reason. It's not my strength. And that's one that as much as I appreciate it in other people, I'm not personally very likely to work on it because it's just been hard.
I wish I knew the 20 tenants, because then I would answer the same question and not just
Yeah.
put you on the spot alone.
I'm happy
I
to be on it.
apologize for not being as versed at this, because I think that's a perfect place for you to reflect back and go,
What about you?
I recognize that. And I really appreciate that, because we do have to have priorities. And sometimes our priorities compete, and yet on the surface. And sometimes they're only competing on the surface. And this is where I see personally, and you tell me how I'm wrong, like working with organizations, seeing this bigger picture. When we have competing priorities, there are one of two places I look. The first place I look is what's eroding the way we work together here? And you used that phrase earlier. It's a phrase I also use. Where is that dissonance? Because usually it's dissonance of something and it's not actually a competing priority. It's a miscommunication or a misunderstanding or lack of clarity around the action, the behavior, the perception we need to get things done. The second thing is usually who's getting in the way. There's usually a person sometimes who's getting in the way, and accidentally or on purpose, consciously or unconsciously, it doesn't matter. And finding that place, finding where that influence is coming and everything's like shaping around also is something to be able to name, both of which after this conversation, I'm like, oh, look at that. I'm trying to identify culture in these different ways. And who knew? I wish I had known about this tool earlier. How cool that we have something that we could go one step further. Because ultimately, what I hear you saying is capturing the value of all this. If I'm picking one, two or three of these tenants seem to be influenced by the one that you're focusing on.
Yeah, there is some overlap.
Yeah, so it's a cascading effect, and that's how I feel about competing priorities. I'm like, yes, you have 10 things to do, but based off of your interest and your actual impact to your business, if you could pick one, how many other things would be impacted by the one you pick in your priorities? It feels like that is a similar concept to what you are doing with culture.
Yes, and let's imagine, right? I'm a systems thinker, and what I'm trying to do for my clients is help them create a better workplace culture. If I can get nerdy on you for a second, I'm a math guy. I'm a civil engineer way back when. So a culture is actually it's a distribution of how individual employees feel about their company, how they show up for one another, et cetera. So if you have a company of 100 employees, think of them as dots that exist under a normal curve. Okay. So like you got a few superstars, you got some real pains in the butt, you got a bunch of people in the middle that aren't doing much for your culture, but they're not hurting it much. And if you want to have a better culture, the way you do that is you move some of the dots, okay, in the right direction. So I, as an individual employee, if I have one or two things I want to work on, great. Somebody else probably is, right? And so when you have 100 employees and they all have the option to say, look, these things would be good for you. Which one do you want to work on? And then hopefully make some progress on that thing. There's spillover for the whole culture, right? We're going to shift that curve and everybody's doing their part, right? And we're making progress as a company and as a team by spreading the load and by letting people lean in where they want. But we need to elevate what are the right things to be working on and thinking about. All you got to do is empower people to make some progress.
Do you have a way for companies to be able to see naturally where people fall into strength, the highest strength for them for each of their employees? And of course, employees would know that, but do you have a way to see that? So a company can say, hey, we're working on this initiative. It needs this kind of a person. Look, we have this group of people that are naturally there. What's their capacity? Are they, would they be somebody that is in the right place at the right time in their journey to be part of this project and then be able to have those kinds of targeted conversations?
On the enterprise version of our product, you can see cumulatively how have your employees rated themselves over the course of the year. You actually get a peer rating because as employees take coaching lessons inside the platform, they're asked then to rate how do your colleagues do on this. And so you start to get a pulse survey too, which is cool. But what's the most important piece there is just that the from a corporation you can see what everybody picked to work on. Like the employee gets to pick, but you get to see the cumulative. Oh, here's across all 20. A lot of people picked this one. Oh, not very many people picked this one. And you can get a sense for who did what. We try to protect anonymity inside the platform because we really want to be able to say to employees, this is for you, right? And so there's a certain amount of visibility that we provide. We intentionally don't unlock the entire thing. We invite Mary to bring that up with her team, with her supervisor, to talk about what are we working on? Who's great at this? Who knows they're not good at this? Just open up this conversation at the team level and you'll see so much progress.
When we don't have a lot of time and we're stretched for time and there's a lot of pressure and priorities, one of the things I recognize is this regardless of what metrics we put up. We were talking about metrics at the beginning, being able to have metrics. They are there. We have to be willing to see them. And it also sounds like there's a little bit of an instinct that develops around the culture. We have this concept of culture. We have this concept of what our culture is. Now we can see what other people are assessing themselves. Is there a way for a company to actually go, so here's the way we do our work together and overlay it on the tenets of, while all are important, what are the ones that stand out that we don't want to get wrong?
When companies use this across their whole organization, that's exactly what we do. Within our best practices manual and guide, what we do is we say, look, the system's going to run in the background. Every employee is going to do a self-assessment. That we're going to email them nudges throughout the year on all 20 of these things. Hey, watch this video every 2 weeks. We take the load off of leadership to have these conversations, and we ask managers to grab that stuff every 2 weeks and have a quick conversation with their team. We give discussion guides. But here's the deal. If there are some of those 20 things that really match with your specific core values or with things that are so important and priorities, those are the things where then we ask senior leadership to lean in at that time, right? So this runs on a year-long campaign where you're going to get exposure to all 20. But if at the start, if a company says, look, this one, there's 3 of them that we really know are important for us, then plan ahead and say, okay, when March hits and the company is focused on this tenet, we're going to have the CEO send an all company note on what he's working on this or she. We're going to do an all staff meeting. We're going to make sure every team does a little team building activity based on this. You don't have to do the same level of intensity for all 20 of these. We believe in all 20, but our clients don't have to. But you would be making a mistake actually not to really lean in and prioritize a few of them and really get people's attention and say, we are going to move the needle on this thing. And that actually is really important for companies to do.
Okay, I have a little tangent here that I want to go down. You co-founded BetterCulture,
Yeah.
which means you are putting strategic thought and work and effort into the day-to-day and the week-to-week and the year-to-year. What does that strategic work time look like for you, and what is the cadence that you follow?
My own
Yeah,
work
you,
schedule?
Brett.
Oh man, that is definitely a tangent.
No, sorry and not sorry, because this
Yeah.
is where I get really excited.
I am not your role model for personal organization and productivity and optimization. I will tell you, there are seasons to my work. I do some keynote speaking and I still do a lot of the live training for many of our clients. And so there are times when my calendar is very heavily saturated with speaking and training and client facing work. And there are other seasons where it's pretty wide open and I have a chance to write blog articles, to create resources, to build new speeches, to create trainings, and to focus on what are the levers that are going to help grow our own business. And I could not give you a normal week for me. It really varies. And I'm fortunate to have a nice team, a really excellent team that increasingly is doing stuff that I'm not aware of what they're doing, which is awesome.
That's part of growth too. I don't know what's happening, but all the things are getting done. And hopefully somebody's going to tell me when there's drag or there's going to be other indications showing up in some way of the metrics that we're following and the conversations that are being had so that we can address those. I'm curious. I like to ask everybody that because we all have our own way to do it and out of sight, out of mind. So it sounds like there are seasons where it is of mind. And then during that season, there's probably some cadence. But I'm guessing I'm probably going to be like, I won't ask you what that season looks like. Cause I'm really interested. I'm like, I have a set time. Like I have something I do every Monday because if I don't, I won't. But what I have found is by doing this every Monday, I'm making better snap decisions in the moment and everybody is clearer about the message. When we're talking about only 22% of people understand where their company is actually going and what they're trying to do in the world, this was something that helped me change that statistic in my organization. And so that was something that came up. So I was like, if we get a tip, great. If we don't, great. And by the way, there is no wrong answer. So somebody is listening to you who's cool. I'm like that. And they're doing something very amazing and being intentional with the time that's right in front of you. And there's something to be said for that.
I will tell you, I'm a big fan of calendar blocking. Birdie,
Oh,
you don't block your calendar for it?
oh no, it's blocked. But
Okay.
me and calendars, we have a complicated relationship.
Sure. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm going to buck against it every step of the way.
I'm aspiring to get to that level of consistency.
All right, Brett, what makes it bold? What makes it bold to claim culture, a foundational element of organizational success and longevity?
I think the thing that makes that bold is that for years, everybody nods their head at, oh, yeah, culture matters. Oh, of course, culture, right? Yeah. Oh, that's everything, right? Oh, yeah. No, you focus on, oh, yeah. Every CEO's letter says our people are our most valuable resource and culture. But if you drill down, what I find out is very few organizations actually spend any time strategically mapping out how are you going to how are you going to make your culture any better? If you say it's important, show me that you're putting the same amount of intellectual rigor into that as you are your sales plan or as you are your expansion, or your financing of your new round of investment or your etc. Show me the strategic emphasis that you're putting on figuring out how is my culture going to be 5% better next year than it is today. And what I find is everybody will say, I know it matters, but if I say, what's your plan? What are you doing about it? Very few companies can go deeper than HR is doing something about it. I guess I don't really know. We try to hire the right people and keep them around, or we put the right people in the right seats. And like that all makes sense, but that's not a plan, right? And so when you have a diluted focus and a diluted plan, you're going to get very diluted results.
Every single time I have a conversation, I take away something that I want to share with 25 people. I know when you're listening to this podcast, you're also listening for that and will have something that you want to share. In the comments, I would like for you to engage with us. What is that thing that you want to tell 25 people from this program? Here's why it's important. It's important because, yeah, there are going to be how-tos. Yes, there are going to be steps. Yes, you're going to be like, oh, I wish I wrote that down. I wish I wasn't doing this and I could actually take action on that right now. But guess what? You're not. So engage right now, because that one thing you want to share with others will be the thing that you can figure out how to incorporate in your business, in your workflow, in your style tomorrow.
Wow! Jess hosts the Bold Business Podcast to provide insights for building a resilient, profitable business by deeply understanding your growth strategy, ensuring market relevance, and your company's future. It is bold to deeply understand your growth strategy with your host, Jess Dewell. Get more information about how to drive solutions and reset your growth mindset at reddirection.com. Thank you for joining us, and special thanks to our post-production team at The Scott Treatment.